Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment you are going to hear the voice of a man who will tell you some tremendously important facts.
Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I have a wonderful episode today. We have Marcus and Sheila Gillette, and they host the popular web series Ask Theo Live. Additionally, they also have Theo's wisdom through public Theo experiences, television and radio appearances worldwide, and in several live and online mentoring programs. Theo is a group that Sheila channels. They are also co-authors of The Soul Truth, A Guide to Inner Peace, and a wonderful new book, The Art of Relationships, Discover the Magic of Unconditional Love. It's just wonderful to have you on. They've also written some other amazing books, including The Fifth Dimension, Channels to a New Reality, which is amazing. And I recommend everybody that follows the channel to read that as well. And I'll have links for all this stuff in the description. And welcome to the Reality Revolution.
Well, I love the title of your show, Brian. It's the Reality Revolution. You know, it really is, isn't it? Because we're all having some wonderful experiences, expansive experiences that let us realize our soul is bigger than our bodies, and that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, not the flip side of that. So it is a bit of a revolution, because everybody is now saying, what's going on with me? They're having some fabulous metaphysical experiences, and we hear this every day of our work. People are asking about those awakenings, if you would.
It's fascinating. When before getting ready for this interview, I did some research, and you guys have been channeling for a very, very long time. What an amazing historical experience of channelings. I'm sure that you have so many wonderful stories. I saw that you were mentors to Esther Hicks as she opened to channeling Abraham in 1984. So to start off, tell us a little bit about your journey and what got you to channeling, how you were introduced to Theo, and how it all started.
In 1969, I had a near-death experience after the birth of a child. I had pulmonary embolus, and my lungs were non-functional. They were full of fluid, and I felt as if an elephant was sitting on my chest. I couldn't breathe. Now, I had two little kids at home. I had a brand new baby, and all I could think of, and I knew if I closed my eyes, I'd never open them again. I did not know, however, in those moments that I was knowing this, my family was being prepared that I wouldn't live through the day.
Wow.
That was after the fact. But I just kept saying, hey, God, give me a job. I will do anything, because I wanted to stay here and be the mother to my children. And so that was like a mantra. And I was just rigidly hanging on, not closing my eyes. And the room, the cubicle in the intensive care, became extremely bright, as if the sun had come up in the room itself. And I saw movement at the end of my bed. And when I looked, Jesus was standing there. Well, you can imagine that. Oh, okay. Hello. And I was mesmerized by his eyes, most beautiful hazel eyes. And when he looked at me, I heard in my inner mind hearing, as we hear our own thoughts, a distinct male voice say to me, remember, my child, you are loved. He took his hands and he crossed his arms like this in front of him, and he had long sleeves, and he smiled. And at that point, I felt as if my crown had opened up, and this warmth started seeping down through every cell of my body. And as it went through my trunk, I felt as if I could take a deep breath.
Wow.
And this is a moment that is frozen in time for me. As I speak to you, I'm seeing the vision of it as I speak. It's not wavered one iota in my memory, as you can imagine it would. And then I started getting better. And I was in the hospital for a month. And when I got home, as soon as I could hold energy, a higher frequency, I started having all kinds of psychic phenomena happening to me, internally, externally. I could hear the messages as I heard Jesus's voice speak to me. I could do automatic writing and many other things. And then I tranced spontaneously and became a direct voice trance medium. And then THEO came through and announced themselves as 12 archangels to be collectively known by the name THEO. They would not identify individually. They said that would give too much importance to the speaker rather than the message. And so they've always just come as THEO. And so that began my journey of over 50 years of doing this work.
Wow. So THEO is a group of angels, and so when they're speaking to you, it's probably one angel at a time, but they don't identify themselves. They're just one of the 12, correct?
They speak through me.
Through you.
So they take over my vocal cords, my body, and speak directly. Whereas with Esther, they speak to her and then she speaks. And that's how it began for her. She could hear it and then speak it. So it happens differently for different people because it has to be psychologically acceptable. Now, I tell people if God had given me a roster of positions, I don't know that I would have chosen this one, because when I opened up and started doing this, it scared people.
Yeah.
I didn't go to social situations and say, guess what I can do? It wasn't as openly discussed as it is now. Here we're on your podcast. It's spoken about on television and in movies. And THEO told me that this would be happening. We didn't even have home computers back then. So they said it would be an international group that would gather, which has come true. Everything that they have predicted for me and through me, I've had enough years of experience to be affirmed and confirmed of that information. And so it's been, as to your point, an interesting ride. It's been an evolutionary ride of watching our human species awaken.
Yeah. As a sort of student of channeling, who I'm fascinated by all of it, you notice that some channelers start off with a really positive message that's uplifting and loving, and then suddenly a fearful message starts to creep in, and clearly, even though they're saying the same name, it appears, at least to my own perception, they're not channeling the same being. So there appears to be some level of discrimination now, because you're saying they're coming directly through you and you kind of lose consciousness. It's probably a little easier to identify that it's THEO and it's not some other entity coming through. Have you ever had any encounters with other beings trying to channel through you?
I've had encounters of other beings, yes. The original one that first came through was Orlos, and told me that, I'm going to say he, for lack of a better phrase, was there to work with my vibrational frequency, my body, to be able to receive higher teachers. And that was about a couple of years. And then I was doing a group in Seattle. There were several people in the room. And Orlo said, it's time for me. The higher teachers are here. And THEO came in very loud. In fact, shocked the people that were in the room. Didn't seem any different to me as it was coming through. But I was in this state of allowance. And remember, I made a commitment to God to do this work. And my greatest concern was that I would interfere with the message. Well, I learned early on I couldn't. And so I just relaxed into it. And I think what you're talking about, there can be a blend that happens over a period of time. I know the evolution of THEO working through me, they've become softer, less, they were more, I'm going to use the word acerbic, but that's not even a good word to use. They were more direct and like, get this because it's the truth. And there was, and they care about people, and they're showing more of like we do, a more of a loving tone than they originally did. It was a bit flipped, but it's evolved over time, as you can imagine, because they're learning from us. They're learning. they take some of our slang even because they want the message to be understood. So they're learning how we talk to each other. And one of the funniest times that I experienced, they said to a client several years ago, they said, "You're making a mole of a mountain." And then they paused and they said to this person, "Do you understand that?" Because they had heard us speak to each other in these certain ways. So they pick up ways of giving the information in a way that we can understand it.
Have you ever?
Also,
Yeah,
they're
go
also
ahead. Sorry.
funnier. I was going to say they also were funnier now. They've been actually telling us, Brian, that they're actually working on their sense of humor, and in a way and they are. I mean, that's the cool thing about it, is they actually really are working on their sense of humor with us. Lately, we just got back from a couple of weeks in Egypt, and Sheila channeled Theo several times while we were there, and there was a lot of feedback from our group that was with us. It came from our community that they've never heard Theo so funny, that they're really genuinely like engaging with us at a different level. And one of the things I wanted to just mention to what you were so accurately pointing out about the information that comes through channels, and this is just specifically my thoughts about Sheila, is that there's such a clear filter with Sheila. In the 25 years that I've been working with her and Theo, there's never been a wavering. Their messages are of hope and optimism and empowerment in the respect that they're empowering us to be the creators. There's nothing scary or fearful at all in their teachings and in their messaging and in their predictions, because we're making this all up as we go along, as you know, right? So it's really about empowering us to be the creators of our reality, and there's nothing fearful unless we want to make it such in that manifestation.
Well, when you say, Marcus, the message really is about love. Loving the self first, and then the old adage, love yourself and then others as yourself. I mean, that they've been very adamant with their process that they began teaching early, many decades ago, called soul integrational process, which allows us to release our limiting beliefs and how to love ourselves. And that changes everything when we do that. So it's the message has been consistent about empowerment of us as individuals and us as master beings, divine beings. They said if we could see ourselves as they see us, there'd be no discontent, and we would treat each other appropriately with love. And I think that's a pretty good message.
I had an amazing experience in LA when I went and saw Esther's channel. And I don't want to ask both of this question. I saw above her head, maybe my eye had been open and I was in that state, but I saw a pool of energy, just cloud of energy. I could see the light. I could see there was something going on. It was not just her talking. And maybe Marcus can answer that. Do you see anything when she channeled? And then when you're channeling personally, do you have any visual sensory? Is the light different? Do you have any sort of just a personal question about what it's like when the channeling occurs?
Yeah, I think that you brought this up because I think it's great that you had that experience. And a lot of people do have experiences of seeing auras, seeing energies, seeing angelic beings, orbs. There's a ton of people in our community seeing orbs now. For me, personally, Brian, working with Sheila and Theo, when Sheila's channeling, it's more of a I have seen energy around her several times, but for me, it's more a vibrational impact where I can feel it viscerally in my physical body, but in my energetic field, I can feel an uptick, an activation, if you will. Sometimes Theo calls it an alignment that takes place energetically, right? Where we just get into balance energetically by virtue of being in their presence. So for me, it's more of a feeling. It's more of a lightness of being, I guess is the best way of describing it, which is really Theo's definition for enlightenment, is a lightheartedness. And that's the vibration. And that's also the vibration that Sheila was just talking about as it relates to Theo's teachings, really being about a becoming of a state of being, not a feeling or an emotion, but a becoming of a state of being of unconditional love of self. Being in that state, in that vibrational state, is almost indescribable. And we've all had glimpses of it, right? And now we're walking in it more and more as our regular way of being.
Have
well,
you
and
ever?
for myself,
Oh, go ahead.
Brian, I do feel that I feel them come in.
Right.
It's not that I see anything because they take over my whole body, but I do feel them come in. And doing it this long, I trust implicitly. And so I'm in a very calm place. And the only way I can describe it, if someone has not had a similar experience, is it's like being in a movie theater and moving over to the next seat, because
Right.
they just take over. But I've had many people say to me they've seen similar things as you saw with Esther, and I'm sure you did. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And I've even had people take photographs that almost blurred me out with so much light. So I've seen it in a photograph, but I haven't personally seen it, if you
Right.
would.
So you can see the progression of at least the books that you've read and the channelings. You really focused on that transition into 5D, and now the message is beyond that of embracing unconditional love and our relationships with each other, not just in a loving relationship, but as a whole, as in the way that we can serve and help each other unconditionally in a loving way. Have you felt the lessons in this change, and is it reflected in the world around us? And how would you kind of describe the way the teachings have progressed?
You're absolutely right. They have progressed as we're ready to understand them.
Yeah.
Marcus often says we're only limited. We're only limited ourselves in our intelligence and our curiosity, because they're there to answer any question that we may ask. And that's limitless. But as I was saying, this awakening, this evolution that's happening in consciousness, of course, as we have a greater understanding, then the information has broadened and deepened as we can accept it, as we can understand it. So yeah, and particularly, and Marcus, you could speak to this as well, particularly in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
It's just, as a matter of fact, when we were writing our new book, The Art of Relationship, it's they've even changed information for that already. They've revised it, they've expanded it, because that's how quickly we're moving energetically in this 5th dimension. And when you look at what's happened in our world, if you think just over the last maybe 120 years, look what's happened.
Yeah.
I mean, we drive cars, we ride on airplanes, we go on trains, all the things that we enjoy now isn't even 200 years old.
Right.
Computers, now we hold a computer in our hand. And when it's not working, we get mad at it. But we've only had that less than 20 years. So it's an amazing expansion of evolution industrially that's going to continue. But we're on that fast track as a species. And Theo talks about the 5th dimension and the tremendous consciousness shift that's happening for our species now. And we have come here to be a part of that.
It's all magnetic. The law of attraction, of course, is a real thing. It does work perfectly all the time. And if you want to know how it's working for you, look at your life.
Exactly.
Look at your relationships. Look where you are in terms of manifesting your dreams and desires, because it's responding. The quantum field is the law of attraction, responding perfectly, moment to moment, precisely matching the vibration that you're in yourself. And as it relates to receptivity, as it relates to worthiness, is a huge piece of this, to Sheila's point about the soul integration process. And it just works. It's just perfect how it works. So particularly in the realm of relationships, this is why in 3 of the first 4 chapters of our new book, Brian, we talk about self-love. We talk about the sacred self. We talk about soul integration as a path to loving the self. We talk about how loving the self changes everything. And then that sets the book up for all of the various specific chapters on romance and healing from betrayal and communication and family and so on, connecting with our deceased loved ones and so on, and as the book unfolds. So it's really about understanding that you're getting precisely what you believe you deserve and that you're open to receive. And once you begin working with that, and that's in the realm of beliefs, and to Sheila's point earlier, when we talk about, the understanding and identifying the genesis of where a belief came from, which could be in this lifetime or in a previous incarnation. Once we've made that connection with the experience in which the belief was created, everything can change. Now we're responding, not reacting to life, right? We're moving into a state of loving the self and not feeling unworthy, not feeling the who me. That's got to be for other people, not me, right? So Theo's teachings are very inspiring and empowering to say, no, it is me. If not me, who? If not now, when, right? I mean, we've all heard that, but it's true. So to Sheila's point earlier about how empowering Theo's teachings are, it all starts with the beliefs about ourselves and understanding where these beliefs were originally adopted or created, and then being able to completely repattern, rewrite the script, if you will, into a much more empowered story about ourselves.
Now, what you're saying is very interesting. As I look at channelings, particularly channelings that focus on the shift in consciousness, one particular topic appears to rise to the top that's very important with many of these higher density or higher energy beings, and that is the sort of conflict between the self and serving others. And there's the extreme where you lose the love of the self and you're not able to help others or be loving to others. And then there's the extreme where you love yourself so much that you can't properly love others. And so it's interesting that you're addressing that, because we have to love ourselves if we're going to be of service to anyone else and be loving to anyone else. If I'm trying to love someone and I don't have any love for myself, then it's going to be reflected in how I'm able to help them. So it's very powerful teaching. Have you noticed this sort of discussion with the balance between self and others in the channelings that you've had over time?
Absolutely, because when they talk about loving the self, it's not narcissistic.
Right.
It's not self-centered. They call it soul-centering. And there's humility in it. It's not an arrogance that happens. Like when we see people that appear to have this, I'm going to call it a superiority complex, that I love myself so much, and they, speak about how great they are. That's just covering up their own inferiority. Truly, it is. But the solid state of unconditional love has humility in it. It's not narcissistic. It's not superior. It emanates from someone compassionately.
Yeah.
Marcus, you probably have something to say about this, because you often do.
Well, I love this topic. It's a great question, Brian. And I'll just add one thing to this. And when we were researching the topic of self-love, I just went to Wikipedia to look up the definition of self-love.
Yeah.
There's two definitions. And the first definition is conceited, narcissistic, self-centered. Second definition, and this was the first one. The second one was necessary for self-fulfillment, and along those lines. So it was the correct definition from our perspective. But what it got me thinking about was, and we talk about this in the introduction to the chapter on loving the self, is how were we raised, right? What belief system were we raised under? And I'll even toss this out without any intention of offending our Christian friends, but what if you were raised with this notion of original sin? You came in with a black mark on your soul. How do you unwind that one throughout your life if you really want to love yourself? I don't know. That to me always seemed, I was raised Catholic, so I can say this. That never made any sense either, of course. So it's really about understanding how you were raised. What was your belief system with regards to loving the self? And most people were raised with it being interpreted as self-centered, narcissistic, conceited. Who are you to say you're God? Who are you to say you're an aspect of God? Which, of course, is what Theo is teaching us as divine beings, divine spiritual beings. So it's just an opportunity to ask ourselves some good questions about what do we adopt? What do we adopt as kids? Maybe there's some experiences we had in previous incarnations that influence our beliefs and emotional patterns in this lifetime on this topic as well. But it's a good question to ask, I think.
Now, one of the topics, for instance, Paul Selig in his recent book, that his guides call it plurality, and in the Law of One, they call it a social memory complex. There's a sort of something that happens as our planet grows in consciousness and the Akashic record sort of comes alive, that we are aware of the consciousness of others, and a sort of new being forms that is that makes up all of us individually, but at the same time we're one being at the same time. We're all one. Has Theo ever addressed this part of our transition as we grow in loving ourselves? We start to love others, and then something else starts to form. And this is a common pattern. I was wondering if perhaps Theo has mentioned something similar.
Yes, but not in those words,
Right,
but it
right.
would mean the same. And that oneness, energetically, we are one. We're one species. It doesn't matter the color of our skin, the language we speak, the country we live in. That doesn't matter. We're all connected. One of the things they said, the pandemic has shown this to us. It didn't differentiate if where you lived in the world, you as a human species were the host to this virus. There was no boundaries. There were no lines of demarcation between the countries. We were all connected. That's part of that oneness.
Yeah.
And part of what they've said about what's happening now, as you mentioned, the fifth dimension, what's happening now is what they were talking about then.
Mm-hmm.
That's all a part of this evolution of consciousness, to recognize what you were speaking about the oneness, the connectedness. Theo says that we're a collaborative species, not competitive, even though many say it's the other way around. But now with our technology and the internet, we can see a cataclysmic event happening anywhere in the world in an instant. Just like we've been watching the Ukrainian war.
Yeah.
And what's our first inclination? What can I do? How can I help? How can I assist those people that are in peril? That's for most of us, not everybody, but most of us have that inclination. And we're not saying, oh, your skin is brown, your skin is white, we're not saying that when we see people in peril. We just want to know, what can I do?
Yeah.
How can I help the suffering? How can I assist someone not to suffer? So I see that as people bring out the compassion and love for others in those circumstances. And what we're learning how to do is be that way without a cataclysm event, that we can love people and assist them and not feel that there's not enough for me. That's the transformation of thought, because there's enough for everybody.
Yeah.
It's just in our belief system and our thinking.
Yeah.
That Marcus, we call it our stinking thinking of the not enoughnesses, but the not enoughnesses live in us. That's where it comes from. It's an inside out job. And when you know you're enough, when you love yourself enough, then you realize that that's not limited. There's enough love for everybody. There's enough, actually, they say there's enough food for everybody. It's just been politically manipulated over the years and times in history.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all changing. We
Right.
are the change makers of this time.
Yeah, and it's also, you mentioned the Akashic records, Brian. So Theo clarifies the Akashic records because there is this expansion of knowledge, of expansion of remembrance, is a good way of putting it, I think.
Yeah.
The Akashic records is not a place we go.
Right.
It resides entirely within the oversoul of each of us. So the Akashic record is every experience, a memory of every experience that we've had in and out of the human body, right? So it's just this wealth of knowledge, to your point, that we're now tapping into, that we're now remembering. And you know, and what does that mean? It just means that we have access to all the knowledge that we could ever possibly imagine needing or wanting in this lifetime. And now, as we raise our vibrational frequency, we're waking up to that. You know, we're remembering who we really are, and that's the becoming that vibrational state of unconditional love that Theo's talking about. And then, last thing I would say on this on your question is, as it relates to the oneness, is that there is a ripple effect vibrationally. Every time we raise our personal vibration, our personal vibrational frequencies, we're impacting the whole. Each one of us, one empowered, loving thought and belief at a time, if you will. You know, that's the impact that we can have. And I think all the teachers that you quoted are absolutely right. And it is an awakening and remembering that's taking place right now in a significant, unprecedented level, frankly.
Undeniable. It's clearly undeniable. So if we have a few moments, I would love to speak to Theo if they would like to answer some questions. I would love to do that. If not, I understand. Would that be okay?
I'd be happy to share Theo with you, Brian.
Oh, thank you.
You know, it's my purpose and passion to share the wisdom of Theo with everybody that wants to hear their message. So I appreciate the opportunity. So it takes just a few seconds. I invite them in and they'll speak to you. So wonderful. I'll see you later.
Okay.
Here we go. It is the beginning, is it not?
It is. Thank you for...
We are appreciative of the opportunity to be of service unto you. You may ask.
First of all, thank you so much. I'm honored to meet you, Theo. And I just want to ask a simple question to start. How do I balance love, wisdom, and power? Each of these things seems separate. As I learn more, as I gain more power, as I encounter and understand love, it appears I need to learn how to balance these things as I go through these level of shifting in consciousness. What advice would you give for balancing love, wisdom, and power?
We would say unto you, they're all the same. For with that solid state of unconditional love, it is a recognition of the power in that and the power in you, that your soul's larger than your physical existence and much more powerful than you've ever known. But with that comes humility. And then there's a balance of not being over powerful unto another, but being present in an environment to assist and to share that wisdom, that knowledge with others as they ask. You will know when they are ready by their asking. And then you share the knowledge and the wisdom that has been gained in the process of your awakening, in the process of your self-realization and revelation. And it is not to overpower another, but to assist another in their process.
I have encountered, Theo, many people that have had memories of a similar life, not a past life, having lived this life in a different parallel reality, or perhaps having relived this life enough to where I'm wondering, you know, I read about Nietzsche and the eternal recurrence, and I read Uspensky, and people have thought, are we reliving this life over and over again? And so when I encounter people that are asking me these questions, can you give me any insight as to whether or not we're reliving our lives in addition to reincarnating? Is there anything that you can answer to them in regards to that?
You're multidimensional beings, and in this time of fifth dimension, the veils between the dimensions are thin, so there would be a recognition of that multidimensional experience, for there is no time. And it's a poor memory that only goes backwards, isn't it? So it's like a prophetic dream. If you've had a prophetic dream, you've been in the future, and then upon the experience happening, you know how you're going to react in that future. Yes, when it
Yes.
happens. So it's similar to that, because energy is constant, only form changes. So in this time, there is a fuller experience of these shifts of vibrational frequency. We even have spoken, if there are those who remember film photography, there is something that occurs in film photography that are double and triple exposed photographs. Yes?
Yes.
In that you can see dimensions, images upon images, when only one photograph has been taken. So this is a way we can speak of it so that the mind can comprehend the possibility.
As I look out into the world and I see terrible things like wars in Ukraine or famine in Africa, and I empathetically feel this in my heart, and I know, as you have taught and others, the power of my mind to create my reality. Is there a way for me to change those realities with my own thoughts to better the world?
Those experiences are history. But of course, you can change a belief system in thinking they're horrific and having sympathy, or to think of them as progressive and change to come. For when things become intolerable, that's when change happens. But understand this, it's not the wringing of the hands and oh my goodness. Each and every one has a voice to say this is no longer to be true. The famine in Africa was politically charged and created, just as the war in Ukraine is politically charged. All wars are. So when you, as a species, say no more and release those who have created these atrocities and make them accountable for their actions against the human species, then change comes. And that comes through love. Loving yourself and others as the self.
Is there a way that I can personally increase the amount of love that I express and bring into my life consciously in this shift?
Yes, making it welcome. It's like your bank account. You can increase that as well. It's all about worth, receptivity, and feeling you're worthy, and that's self-love. For an example, can you increase love in your life? Of course you can. Open your heart more. Can you give more? Yes, you can, because your soul's much larger than your physical body, and it's a vibrational frequency that's eternal. If you were to stretch your arms out in the room that you are in, you could feel the walls at the opposite ends of your hands. That's your energy field. And it can extend beyond those walls as well. It will give you some insight of how to project that love from your heart and let it flow around the world, just like throwing a pebble into a pond and the vibration of that making those circular motions ever extending. So yes, you can, but it's fast to love the self. It is not selfish. It is not self-centered. It's soul-centered. And when you are soul-centered, there's compassion and love for all.
When you talk about self-love, the thought that comes to mind is forgiveness. I personally, that was the thing that blocked me from being more loving, is not forgiving myself. And I've encountered other people that have had this. Do you have any suggestions in how I can be more forgiving, letting go of the past and forgiving of others and teaching forgiveness to others, as we go through this shift?
The forgiveness of the self is utmost importance. Forgiveness is not for another, it's for you. And most often, you as an individual is harsher on the self than anyone else is. But understand this, that the forgiveness is important because you're viewing what has come before, what you've done before with a critical, judgmental eye, and think you cannot forgive the self for those actions or whatever is holding you up from that forgiveness. But events and circumstances won't change. That's history. But your belief about them, looking for the blessings and gifts and how it grew you, can change that belief from being horrific to empowerment. But you're judging yourself at an age when you didn't have the knowledge you have now. You didn't know what you know now then. And isn't that harsh? You did what you did with the knowledge that you had in the moment to survive. And so to honor that part of self rather than judge it harshly, for the strength and courage it had to make you the man you are today. That's love.
Thank you. And I'm sure that many people that are listening thank you as well for those kind words. So as we're moving through this transition, one thing that we begin to become aware of is that our feelings are creative. And oftentimes I deal with people that get bad moods, or they get depressed, and they become waves. And so we try to alter it, we adjust it. Do you have any suggestions on how I can regulate and control, and not necessarily control, but regulate or come to terms with bad moods or uncomfortable feelings that come up through this spiritual journey?
So to understand this, those are reactives, aren't they?
Right.
Reaction gives you some information that there's this little fragmented part of yourself that feels not heard, not loved, not acknowledged. So who is that? It's not the adult self that's acknowledging this mood, as you put it. But most of the time, humans are trying to avoid uncomfortable emotions, and they take for granted the good ones, and you need all of them. That's what you've come to recognize. And the unrepressed and unknown emotions bring about depression and anxiety. So it's to be embraced, to acknowledge, I'm reacting. Who's reacting in me? Who's the witnesser in you that's noticing you're in a bad mood? That same noticer can ask, who inside of me is uncomfortable? And the adult you can love that part of self forward into the moment, letting it know it's loved, heard, and will not be abandoned.
Well, thank you for that. It's the words are simple but wonderful, and they speak to me directly, and I thank you for that. So as I speak to people that are going through this process, a lot of times another common element is that they have someone in their life that they're very uncomfortable with. They maybe somebody they don't get along with in their family, or somebody that they don't get along with in their company or work. And so this ends up being a spiritual lesson for them. How do we deal with people that are seemingly incongruous with our vibration? Is there a way for us to raise them in our vibration? Should we separate them and move away from them? Is there some way to deal with people that are that we inconveniently struggle with, even with the desire to be loving?
So understand this, humans talk about soulmates. And they can be your greatest challenge. And that's what you're talking about as well. There's a reason you're in that environment together. What's the greater learning? And possibly it's boundaries. People allow others to treat them the way they treat them. And if you make a boundary and say that treatment is not allowed, that's a loving statement, needs not be angry, that the power of the word no. No is a sentence. You don't have to explain yourself and you don't have to be harsh. But the old paradigm is there has to be this anger before one can speak the truth of who they are. And it is quite possible that you can remove yourself from the environment in taking those boundaries and saying, I'm worthy of love. So it's situational, of course, isn't it?
Yes.
But people allow others to treat them the way they do until they don't. For an example, a small example we use ad nauseum is if a friend says, or even a family member, loved one, and know this, you don't have to like your family. Just because you're genetically connected doesn't mean that you're soulfully connected. That's a misunderstanding. That's another statement for later. However, we digress. Being in an environment that's uncomfortable, one can change kindly. So we're back to the story of someone inviting you to have a meal with them. And you like this person. It's not somebody at odds with, but you don't like Italian food that they've offered. But over time, you've acquiesced and said yes, and then had an upset belly or gut because you ate something that was uncomfortable. And then you blame them for having chosen Italian food, and it distorts your time together. Yes?
Yes.
Wouldn't it have been better to say, I would love to spend that time with you? But could we make another choice of where to eat that we both could enjoy? Soft, isn't it? Loving. And then there's no distortion of upset and blame that can occur. That's just a simple example of holding a boundary, of loving yourself enough to say, I don't want my gut upset, but I would like to spend time with this person, so let's make a different choice.
Now, a question that comes to mind is my kids. I remember how I was when I was their age. There's a deep desire for my kids to awaken in the way that I've awakened, because I'm coming from the 50-year-old me looking at my kids, 16 and 20 years old. And I desperately want them to awaken. I record my podcasts for them, hoping that someday, maybe years from now, they'll listen to them and something will awaken them. But is there something that I can do in my relationship with my kids to help them to awaken during this shift as they go through their normal everyday life?
Understand they came in awakened. It's not your job to awaken them. It's their own. However, understand this, they're watching you. And whether they listen to your podcast now or another time, they're watching and they're learning from how you live your life. And when they begin to ask questions, and they will, because they know the subject's not off-putting to you, as in many other children's homes. So they feel comfortable in asking questions, and they've begun.
Yeah.
But no, they're at an age now that they're very myopic on themselves.
Yes.
But they do care about others. They have good hearts and they're loving. And that's what you've taught them. And the other expanded knowledge that you would like to share with them will come So they'll ask and they'll wish to know, and they will listen to the information. You may not always know about it.
That is wonderful. That's good news. That gives me assurance that at least we're on the right path. So there some unusual questions. Can we speak faster than can we travel faster than the speed of light?
Yes. Again, your energy. What you're talking about is energy transference and movement. So yes, if you use all your intuitive abilities and all your abilities that you have, you're more than this physical body. You're not limited to it. So you can imagine and send your energy in another place in an instant. Many have experienced what is called remote viewing by being in two places at once. That's possible.
So as we start to raise our consciousness and we meet incredibly enlightened beings as yourselves, as we encounter these other beings, it appears in some cases, some of these beings do not have my best intentions at heart. And as the more and more, as I choose what I resonate with, even though it's dualistic, it appears there's a group that seems to be manipulating things to slow down the awakening or work against me. And there's a group that appears to be working towards the unification and increasing the love on the planet. I see these forces on a regular basis. Is there a way for me to encounter these forces in a loving way so I don't get caught up in it, but I can see it and understand it, if my question makes sense to you?
We are aware of what you're saying, so it's the duality you're talking about.
Yeah.
And understand that nothing can happen to you that's not allowed. And what you're witnessing now in human society is the acceptance of others' opinions that override your own. There's in some not a critical thinking, not trusting the self, giving the power away. And so these are the forces you're looking at now of change. It's the energy of change, the chaos of change, if you would, to a higher frequency. It's like the Brigidine theory of the atom. It first becomes enlarged and chaotic on the inside before breakthrough can happen. And so that's what's happening on your planet now. And that's what you're visualizing and seeing, is that chaos.
That makes sense. As is there anything that I can do to address this? If I want to increase the love, is there anything I can do other than just be loving, actively, proactively in the world?
It's not about doing, it's about being.
Okay.
Because if you're being that, when the opportunity presents to express that love, you'll take action.
Is there any I do meditations on my channel a lot. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to meditate together, but I don't consider myself any sort of expert on meditation. Is there a particular form of meditation that would be helpful that I can look into or teach more, that would help people to awaken to this unconditional love in this transition to the 5D?
There are many forms of meditation. Just doing it is what's important. Everybody's an expert at meditation if they've ever daydreamed. If they've altered their conscious state, they've meditated. But most think it's something they have to learn, or it's outside them. It's inside you. Okay. So whatever meditation you're drawn to do with others, it will benefit others as well as yourself. And using myriad of forms of meditation gives your group an opportunity to find out what they like best, what works for them best, that they will make habit For to do meditation habitually, daily, is a way of expanding consciousness, but it's also excellent for the physical body, giving it a complete rest in the nervous system. So it has many benefits, as you know.
As we go through this transition, and I, in my own self, have a desire to be of greater service to others. I understand that, as I awaken and understand my purpose and find myself loving people more and more, it's natural for me to be of service to them. I see myself in everyone. But there are times when I may be of service to someone, or I think I know what's best, and I do a disservice to them. And so it seems like there are times when it's better for me to let them do what they need to do, and that is a service to them. And there are times when I can be of service and really help somebody. There seems to be this sort of gray area where it's better to help somebody help themselves. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I'm getting my point across. What is the best way for me to be of service, but not to, unfortunately or accidentally be of disservice to somebody in my attempt to be of service?
When your attempt to be of service, as you're speaking of it, is judgment.
Okay.
You're judging that you know better than they do.
Right.
So it is trusting their soul to draw unto them their greatest opportunity for expansion and growth. However, the key for you to know when to take action is when they ask. They ask for information, or they ask, what do you think? But remember, come from your heart, not your head.
Okay.
Because intellect wants to control, but the heart is the seat of the soul, and that's where love is. So come from that loving place of information rather than intellectual thinking.
Theo, I just want to thank you for the wonderful opportunity to ask you these questions and answering them. It's been an honor. I'll keep an eye out for your book, and thank you so much for answering these questions, and thank you for the service that you've offered as a channel. I appreciate it immensely.
We appreciate the opportunity to serve. You are complete with your asking.
I'm complete with my asking. Thank you, Theo.
God's love unto you. Good day.
Good day.
Mhm.
Well,
Hi,
thank you.
Brian. Hi, Marcus.
Hey, Sheila, welcome back.
Thank you.
So I have a question. You have the cat back there. I have a couple cats myself. Do the cats become more attracted or have changed their behavior when you're channeling Theo?
Actually, that's a dog.
Oh, a dog. Okay, I thought
Wonder-
it was a cat. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
It's Wonder Dog
Please forgive me.
Charlie. Yeah, animals are always attracted. If I, in the past, when I've done groups in homes, and there
Yeah.
have been animals, they want to be right there. In fact, I had one time, I have a funny story since you have cats. I was in Crested Butte, Colorado, which you may know about.
Oh, yeah.
It's a beautiful little town, and I was working with, and some of your listeners might know Virginia Satir. She was a
Oh, wow.
leader in personal therapy and family therapy. But I was working with her and her group, and we were in a home, and there was a cat in the house. And the cat kept circling around trying to get to me. And the group was sitting in a semicircle where there were several people. And the cat was probably 10 feet away from me. And it leapt right at me. And my assistant was sitting next to me. And she reached up and caught the cat midair. And I have to tell you, I asked her later, I felt as if somebody had hit me in the chest. That was the energy, because they hit the energy field.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't land on me at all. She caught it and set it down because she'd been watching it. We know what animals do. They want to be close to the energy. And I said to her, I said, gosh, why did you hit me? I didn't. And she did
Yeah.
relay this story about the cat. And so to your point, they love the energy. You probably find when you're meditating, they want to
My
be
cats are always there. I can't believe I thought it was a cat for some reason. Maybe I'm so focused on you that it was blurred in the
I
back.
mean, you don't see his full self.
Yeah, but
He's cuddled up in the corner.
oh, well, I just want to thank you guys. It's been so much fun to talk about this stuff and spend this time with me. And thank you to Theo and Marcus. And I'll make sure to put all the links in the description. Everybody needs to get the Fifth Dimension, Channels to a New Reality, the new book, Discover the Magic of Unconditional Love. And you can also get a free meditation by going on the website, www.asktheo.com/love. And you have raising the vibration meditation. Is that what it is, Marcus?
We've got Vibrant Relationships is on
Vibrant
that page, and
Okay.
they're welcome to purchase the book there too. As a matter of fact, there's a link to
Fantastic.
buy the book. Yeah.
So I'll put the links in the description, and everybody check them out. And there's also available on YouTube tons of other information and channelings. There's so much. You've been doing this for so long. Thank you for your service. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, Brian, it's been a delight being with you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your support and sharing Theo with the world. I truly appreciate that.
Yeah, it's been great being here with you, Brian. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you, Marcus.
We return you now to your local announcer.